The metal beast hovered silently above the ocean floor, its mechanical eye staring into darkness that had remained undisturbed for nearly 8 decades. 3,000 meters below the surface of the North Atlantic, the autonomous underwater drone maintained perfect buoyancy as its powerful LED arrays illuminated a haunting scene. The twisted metal of what was once the pride of the Kriegsmarine emerged from the darkness, the wreckage of the Bismarck, arguably the most powerful battleship of its era, now a grave site resting on the seabed since May 27, 1941. "Wait, something is wrong with these readings," murmured Dr. Zara Aldridge, marine archaeologist and expedition leader, as she studied the real-time sonar data streaming to the research vessel floating 3 kilometers above. "Howard, are you seeing this anomaly on the starboard side? That doesn't match any of the historical records." Howard Winters, the expedition's chief underwater robotics engineer, adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to the monitor. "That structure shouldn't be there." The hull integrity in that section was reportedly compromised by British torpedoes. What began as a routine historical documentation mission was about to uncover something that would rewrite naval history books and challenge the long-accepted narrative of one of World War II's most famous sea battles. The drone's discovery would spark international controversy and force historians, engineers, and military experts to reconsider what they thought they knew about the final hours of the mighty Bismarck. None of the 12 scientists aboard the research vessel could have anticipated how the next 72 hours would unfold, or how a technological marvel from the 21st century would finally expose the dark truth hidden within a technological marvel from the 20th. The North Atlantic has always been a keeper of secrets. Today, one of its oldest was about to be revealed. The research vessel Oceanic Explorer pitched gently in the rolling swells of the North Atlantic. It was June 2023, and the weather had been unexpectedly cooperative for this region notorious for its turbulent seas. The international research team had been at the Bismarck site for 3 days already, methodically mapping the wreckage with their state-of-the-art autonomous underwater vehicle AUV, named Hermes. The Bismarck has been surveyed several times since Dr. Robert Ballard discovered it in 1989. Dr. Aldridge explained to the assembled team during their morning briefing. But technology has advanced exponentially since then. Hermes represents a quantum leap in deep-sea exploration capabilities. Indeed, the Hermes AUV was a marvel of modern engineering. Unlike previous remotely operated vehicles that required constant tethering to surface ships, Hermes could operate autonomously for up to 48 hours. Its advanced AI navigation systems allowed it to make real-time decisions about the most efficient survey patterns. Equipped with multi-beam sonar, high-definition cameras, and sophisticated sensors capable of detecting material composition, Hermes could create detailed 3D models of underwater structures with millimeter precision. "What makes this expedition unique," Howard Winters added, "is that we're not just looking at the exterior. Hermes is designed to penetrate sections of the wreck previously inaccessible to larger ROVs. Its compact frame and advanced obstacle avoidance systems mean it can navigate through much tighter spaces than any previous survey vehicle." The history of the Bismarck loomed large over the mission. Launched in 1939, the ship represented Nazi Germany's most formidable naval weapon. A 50,000-ton battleship armed with 8 15-inch guns that could hurl 1-ton shells more than 23 miles. Its construction incorporated innovative engineering features that made it nearly unsinkable by the naval warfare standards of its day. Dr. Felix Neumann, the expedition's resident naval historian, provided context to the team. The Bismarck's brief operational history changed the course of naval warfare. During its first and only offensive mission in May 1941, it sank the HMS Hood, pride of the British fleet, in a matter of minutes. That single engagement sent shockwaves through the Allied command and triggered one of the largest naval pursuits in history. What followed was a 3-day chase involving dozens of British warships, continued Neumann. After a torpedo bomber damaged the Bismarck's rudder, leaving it unable to maneuver, the British battleships Rodney and King George V pounded it with hundreds of shells. Finally, either British torpedoes or scuttling charges placed by the German crew sent it to the bottom. That final question, was it sunk by the British or scuttled by its own crew, remains one of the most contested aspects of the Bismarck story. The official mission objectives were straightforward: create the most detailed 3D survey of the Bismarck wreck ever attempted, document its deterioration since previous expeditions, and search for artifacts that might provide new historical insights. But beneath these stated goals, each senior team member harbored their own questions. Zara Aldridge was particularly interested in evidence that might resolve the sinking versus scuttling debate. Howard Winters wanted to test Hermes' capabilities in one of the most challenging deep-sea environments possible. And Felix Newman hoped to find documentation or personal effects that might humanize the 2,131 German sailors who perished with the ship. None of them expected to find evidence that would call into question the entire historical narrative of the Bismarck's final battle. "We're receiving the first interior mapping data from compartment B-21, announced Amelia Torres, the sonar imaging specialist, on the morning of the fourth day. That's just aft of where the shell magazine would have been located. The team gathered around her workstation as three-dimensional renderings began to form on the large display. The ghostly blue-green wireframe showed the twisted metal infrastructure of the Bismarck's interior, a haunting digital reconstruction of spaces where men had lived, fought, and died. Wait, what's that structural anomaly? Howard pointed to an unusual formation in the rendering. Can we get Hermes to investigate that section more thoroughly? Dr. Aldridge nodded. Send new mapping parameters. I want detailed sonar of that entire compartment and adjacent spaces. As the team waited for Hermes to reposition and begin its new survey pattern, Dr. Newman provided additional context. That section should house auxiliary machinery for the port propulsion systems. According to the Bismarck's blueprints, there would have been access corridors running port to starboard through that area. 6 hours later, Hermes transmitted a comprehensive data package that left the entire team puzzled and increasingly disturbed. "This doesn't make any sense," Zara murmured, manipulating the 3D model on the main display. "According to these readings, there's a compartment here that doesn't appear on any of the Bismarck's original plans. The mysterious space measured approximately 15 meters long by 8 meters wide, substantial enough that its absence from official blueprints seemed impossible to explain as an oversight. Could it be damage-related?" suggested one of the junior researchers. "Perhaps structural collapse created a void that just appears to be a deliberate compartment?" Howard shook his head. "No, look at the entry points. These are manufactured doorways with what appear to be reinforced frames. This was intentionally designed and built into the ship." As the team debated possible explanations, Hermes continued its methodical exploration. When it reached the mysterious compartment's sealed doorway, its cameras captured something that silenced everyone on the research vessel. The heavy steel door, though corroded by decades underwater, clearly displayed markings that had no place on a German naval vessel of World War II. Cyrillic letters. "Are those Russian markings?" asked Amelia, voicing what everyone was thinking. Dr. Newman leaned forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and growing excitement. "This is impossible. There was no Russian involvement in the construction of the Bismarck. The ship was built at the Blohm and Voss shipyard in Hamburg between 1936 and 1939, during a period when Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were not yet allies. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Inside what should have been a standard German battleship was a compartment bearing Soviet markings. "We need to get inside that room," Dr. Aldridge declared. The hidden compartment presented a formidable challenge. After 8 decades underwater, the steel door had fused with its frame, corroded by salt water and encrusted with marine growth. Though Hermes was equipped with a robotic arm and various sampling tools, it wasn't designed for forced entry into sealed spaces. "We could try using the water jet cutter," Howard suggested after the team had spent hours brainstorming solutions. "It's meant for taking geological core samples, but theoretically, we could modify it to cut through the door's hinges or locking mechanism." Dr. Aldridge considered the proposal. "The Bismarck is a war grave, and we have strict protocols about disturbance. But this discovery potentially rewrites history. I think we can justify minimal intrusion." After receiving approval from the expedition's ethics committee and documenting their reasoning, the team programmed new instructions for Hermes. The AUV would attempt to cut through the hinges of the mysterious door using its high-pressure water jet system, normally reserved for geological sampling. As they waited for Hermes to complete its delicate operation, the researchers began speculating about what might lie behind the door. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact wasn't signed until August 1939, just as the Bismarck was completing construction, noted Dr. Newman, referencing the non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. But there were earlier, less formal technological exchanges between German and Soviet engineers in the 1930s. Could this be evidence of Soviet technical assistance? Wondered Amelia. That would be historically explosive, replied Newman. The official narrative is that the Bismarck represented purely German naval engineering. If the Soviets contributed significant technology, it would change our understanding of pre-war geopolitics and technological development. After 4 tense hours, Hermes succeeded in cutting through the corroded hinges. Using its mechanical manipulator arm, the AUV gently pushed the door inward. As it floated across the threshold, its powerful lights illuminated a space that had not seen light since the Bismarck slipped beneath the waves in 1941. The team aboard the Oceanic Explorer collectively held their breath as the first images were transmitted to the surface. "My God!" whispered Howard. The compartment contained what appeared to be equipment entirely incongruous with a 1940s battleship. Metal consoles lined the walls, covered with dials, switches, and what looked remarkably like early cathode ray tube displays. Massive cylindrical objects occupied the center of the room, connected by a complex network of pipes and cables. "This looks more advanced than anything that should have existed in 1941, said Zara, her voice barely audible. "Those display units resemble radar consoles from the 1950s, not the 1940s. As Hermes moved deeper into the room, its cameras captured additional details. Papers and logbooks lay scattered across the floor, preserved in the low-oxygen environment of the sealed compartment. A large schematic diagram hung on one wall, partially visible despite decades of submersion. "Can we get closer to that diagram?" Dr. Aldridge requested. As Hermes approached, the image became clearer. The schematic appeared to depict some kind of advanced propulsion system unlike anything used in conventional naval vessels of the era. "That's not a standard diesel or steam turbine design," Howard observed, his engineering background immediately recognizing the anomaly. "Those look like electromagnetic field generators?" Dr. Newman, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. There were rumors, dismissed as fantasy by most historians, about a secret Nazi propulsion project called Project Donnerschlag or Project Thunderclap. It was supposedly a radical electromagnetic propulsion system that would allow ships to achieve unprecedented speeds while generating minimal acoustic signature. "You're saying the Bismarck had some kind of experimental silent drive system?" asked Amelia, incredulous. "I'm saying it's possible this compartment contains prototype technology that was never documented in official records," Newman replied cautiously. "And the Soviet markings suggest international collaboration that both sides would have had every reason to keep secret." Howard directed Hermes to scan one of the logbooks lying on the floor. Though water damage had rendered much of it illegible, certain pages remained partially readable. The text was in German, but interspersed with technical terms and what appeared to be Russian annotations. "We need to document everything meticulously," Dr. Aldridge instructed, "and we need to consider the implications very carefully before we share this with the wider world." The team worked through the night, directing Hermes through a comprehensive survey of the hidden compartment. The drone collected high-resolution imagery of every piece of equipment, every document, every marking on the walls. It used its advanced sensors to analyze the material composition of the mysterious cylindrical devices and console units. By morning, a disturbing picture had begun to emerge, one that suggested the Bismarck had been carrying technological secrets far beyond what history had recorded. "Electromagnetic propulsion in 1941? That's nearly impossible," declared Dr. Raymond Chin, the team's materials scientist, after reviewing the sensor data from Hermes. The technological prerequisites simply didn't exist. The senior researchers had gathered in the ship's conference room, away from the younger team members, to discuss their findings and determine next steps. The atmosphere was tense with the weight of their discovery. "The evidence suggests otherwise," countered Howard. The material composition analysis shows alloys that weren't in common use until the 1960s. And the configuration of those field generators corresponds to theoretical models of magnetohydrodynamic propulsion. Magnetohydrodynamic? You mean like a submarine silent drive system? Asked Zara. Exactly, Howard nodded. It's technology that uses electromagnetic fields to propel a conductive fluid, in this case, seawater, without moving parts. The Soviets allegedly developed experimental versions in the 1960s, and the Americans researched it for submarine propulsion during the Cold War. But seeing evidence of it in 1941 is revolutionary. Dr. Newman had spent the night researching historical archives via satellite link. I found fragmentary references in declassified Soviet archives to a joint German-Soviet naval technology program codenamed Project Neptune. It was supposedly terminated when Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, just weeks after the Bismarck was sunk. So the Bismarck might have been carrying prototype Soviet technology when it embarked on its mission? Amelia asked. It appears so, confirmed Newman, which raises disturbing questions about what Hitler planned to do with that technology, and why both German and Soviet historical records erased all mention of this collaboration. Dr. Aldridge tapped her pen thoughtfully against the conference table. We need to understand the strategic context. The Bismarck broke out into the Atlantic on May 18, 1941. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, began on June 22, 1941. That's barely a month later. You think the mission timing wasn't coincidental, Howard observed. I think nothing about this was coincidental, Zara replied. The Bismarck was Germany's most powerful warship, carrying what might have been revolutionary propulsion technology developed in collaboration with the Soviets, embarking on a mission just weeks before Hitler betrayed Stalin and launched the largest invasion in military history. The implications hung heavy in the air. Had the Bismarck been carrying technology that Hitler intended to keep for Germany alone once he turned against his Soviet pseudo-allies? Was this why the ship's mission had been shrouded in such secrecy? There's another question we need to consider, said Howard quietly. If the Bismarck had this advanced propulsion technology, why didn't it use it to escape the British fleet after its rudder was damaged by that torpedo bomber? The team fell silent, contemplating this puzzle. We need more data, Zara decided. Let's send Hermes back in to conduct a more detailed analysis of the propulsion system components. And let's scan adjacent compartments to see if there are connections to the conventional engine rooms. Over the next 24 hours, Hermes conducted an exhaustive examination of the mysterious technology and surrounding areas. What emerged was a picture of an experimental system that had been installed in parallel with the Bismarck's conventional propulsion. It appears to have been designed as an auxiliary system, explained Howard, pointing to newly rendered 3D models. The electromagnetic drive wasn't meant to replace the traditional propellers, but to supplement them in specific scenarios. Like silent running to evade sonar detection? Suggested Amelia. Possibly. Or perhaps for short bursts of extreme speed, Howard replied. But here's the critical finding. These connections to the main power system show evidence of battle damage. Look here and here. He indicated several locations on the model. These power conduits were severed by what appear to be internal explosions. Dr. Chun examined the damage patterns. Those rupture patterns are consistent with shell impacts. If British shells penetrated to this depth and damaged these power connections, then the experimental drive system would have been inoperable during the final battle, concluded Zara. That would explain why it couldn't be used to compensate for the rudder damage. As the team continued analyzing the data, Hermes made another significant discovery in its exploration of adjacent compartments. In what appeared to be a small office connected to the hidden technology room, the AUV found a safe that had remained sealed despite the violence of the ship sinking. Using its precision tools, and after careful ethical deliberation by the team, Hermes managed to open the safe. Inside were documents preserved in waterproof containers. Documents that would prove to be the most shocking discovery yet. These are technical specifications signed by both German and Soviet engineers, reported Dr. Newman after preliminary translation of the recovered papers. But there's more. There are also strategic deployment plans indicating that the Bismarck was to demonstrate the new propulsion technology by breaking through British naval blockades in the North Atlantic, then rendezvousing with Soviet technical personnel in a neutral port. Which neutral port? Asked Zara. Cadiz, Spain, replied Newman. From there, according to these documents, the technology was to be transferred to select vessels in both the German and Soviet navies. So this was a joint field test of shared technology, mused Howard. But given the timing relative to Operation Barbarossa, Hitler must have already decided to betray this agreement. Which means, said Zara, piecing it together, that the Bismarck's mission may have had a dual purpose. Officially, to attack Allied shipping, but secretly, to test and then secure revolutionary technology that Germany intended to monopolize once it attacked the Soviet Union. The team sat in stunned silence as they absorbed the implications. The Bismarck saga, one of the most famous naval episodes of World War II, had contained a hidden dimension unknown to history for over 80 years. We have an obligation to document this properly, Zara finally said, but we also need to be extremely careful about how we present these findings. This rewrites not just naval history but aspects of pre-Barbarossa German-Soviet relations. Little did they know that their careful documentation would soon be overtaken by events beyond their control, and that the secrets of the Bismarck were about to thrust them into an international controversy that would extend far beyond historical academia. The first hint of trouble came 3 days later when the oceanic explorer detected an unidentified vessel approaching their position. Initially dismissed as a passing commercial ship, concern mounted when the vessel changed course directly toward them and increased speed. "We're picking up radio communications," reported the ship's communication officer. "They're identifying themselves as the Russian oceanographic research vessel Academic Fyodorov. They're requesting permission to approach and establish direct contact regarding our research activities." Dr. Aldridge exchanged worried glances with Howard and Dr. Newman. Their discovery had been reported only to their university sponsors and the International Historical Commission that had authorized the expedition. The appearance of a Russian research vessel suggested information had leaked, or that someone had been monitoring their communications. "We should establish contact but remain non-committal about our findings," suggested Newman. "We're in international waters, and our research permits are in order." Within hours, the Academic Fyodorov had positioned itself 2 kilometers from the oceanic explorer. A formal request came through for a meeting between the research teams. "Dr. Pyotr Sokolov sends his compliments," relayed the communications officer. "He's requesting to come aboard with 2 colleagues to discuss, quote, matters of mutual historical interest regarding the Bismarck exploration." After consultation with their university sponsors via satellite phone, Dr. Aldridge agreed to the meeting but instructed the team to secure their most sensitive findings and to be discreet about the full extent of their discoveries. Dr. Sokolov arrived with 2 individuals introduced as historical researchers, though their bearing and manner suggested military or intelligence backgrounds to the experienced members of Zara's team. After pleasantries and an exchange of formal credentials, Sokolov came directly to the point. "We understand your autonomous vehicle has accessed a sealed compartment within the Bismarck wreckage," he stated without preamble. "The Russian Historical Foundation has profound interest in any Soviet-related artifacts or documentation you may have discovered." The direct approach confirmed what Zara had suspected. Somehow, the Russians had learned of their discovery. But how much did they know? "We've conducted a thorough survey of the wreck," she replied carefully. "Our findings will be published according to standard archaeological protocols after proper analysis and peer review." Sokolov's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, Dr. Aldridge, but perhaps we could expedite matters through collaboration. The technology you've discovered represents a significant chapter in Soviet engineering history. My government is prepared to offer substantial research funding in exchange for prioritized access to your findings." The implicit threat beneath the offer was clear to everyone present. Howard intervened with practiced diplomatic skill. "Your interest is understandable, Dr. Sokolov. We're still in the preliminary stages of analyzing the unusual compartment we discovered. Perhaps we could establish a formal information-sharing protocol through appropriate international academic channels." The meeting continued for another hour, with the Russian team pressing for immediate access to the Hermes data and recovered documents, while Zara's team politely but firmly maintained their academic independence. When the Russians finally departed, the atmosphere on the Oceanic Explorer remained tense. "They'll be back with a more aggressive approach," predicted Dr. Newman. "And they might not be the only ones. Once word gets out about Soviet technology on a Nazi battleship, multiple governments will have intense interest." His prediction proved accurate sooner than expected. The following morning, the ship's radar detected two more approaching vessels, one identified as a German naval research ship, the other flying a British flag. "This is escalating too quickly," Zara decided. "We need to protect our findings and ensure independent analysis before national interests corrupt the historical record." In an emergency meeting with the entire research team, she outlined a bold plan. They would create duplicate backups of all their data and findings, then split them among trusted team members. The Hermes AUV would complete one final, comprehensive scan of the secret compartment before they recalled it and departed the Bismarck site. "We're not equipped for a multinational confrontation at sea," she explained. "Our mission is historical truth, not international politics." As the team rushed to implement their plan, Hermes made its final dive to the Bismarck wreck. The AUV was programmed to conduct ultra-high-resolution scans of every component in the secret compartment, with particular focus on manufacturer markings, serial numbers, and any text on the recovered documents that previous scans might have missed. What Hermes transmitted back during those final hours would provide the definitive evidence they needed, and reveal the true purpose of the Bismarck's fatal mission. Among the newly discovered details were manufacturing dates on several components of the electromagnetic propulsion system. Most significantly, serial numbers and factory codes on the main control units corresponded to a Soviet naval research facility in Leningrad that had been developing experimental propulsion systems since the mid-1930s. But the most startling discovery came from a previously overlooked logbook that had fallen behind one of the control consoles. When Hermes retrieved it and scanned its water-damaged pages, Dr. Newman was able to translate enough entries to piece together a chilling narrative. According to these logs, he reported to the assembled senior researchers, the electromagnetic propulsion system was installed and tested during the Bismarck sea trials in the Baltic, but it was never fully integrated into the ship's operational systems because of technical problems and power supply limitations. "So it was essentially a prototype installation?" asked Howard. "Yes, but here's where it gets truly interesting," continued Newman. "The final entries, dated just days before the Bismarck departed on its mission, indicate that German engineers were ordered to disable key components of the system and replace them with non-functional replicas." Disable it? Why would they cripple their own advanced technology? Amelia wondered aloud. Zara's expression darkened as she pieced together the implications. Because the Bismarck wasn't meant to return from its mission. The team stared at her in shock. "Think about it," she continued. "Hitler had already planned Operation Barbarossa to invade the Soviet Union. The last thing he would want was for his supposed Soviet allies to have access to shared advanced technology once that invasion began. But he also couldn't simply renege on technical agreements without alerting Stalin that something was amiss. So the Bismarck was sent out as a show of continued cooperation, but with the secret Soviet technology deliberately sabotaged," Howard realized. "And no one expected the ship to survive to tell the tale." "Precisely," said Zara. "These logs suggest the ship's captain, Gunther Luchins, wasn't aware of the sabotage. He believed he had revolutionary propulsion technology at his disposal if needed. But when the moment came that he might have used it, after the rudder damage, he discovered it was non-functional. The final pieces of the historical puzzle were falling into place, revealing a dark calculation at the highest levels of Nazi leadership. The Bismarck had been sent on what appeared to be an ambitious commerce-raiding mission, but with secretly disabled Soviet technology on board that would never return to either German or Soviet hands. This wasn't just about testing the British naval response or disrupting Atlantic shipping lanes, concluded Dr. Newman grimly. It was about eliminating evidence of German-Soviet technical collaboration before launching an invasion of the Soviet Union. As Hermes completed its final scans and began its ascent to the surface, the team on the Oceanic Explorer prepared to depart with their world-changing historical discovery. and the knowledge that multiple governments would go to extraordinary lengths to control or suppress it. The race to preserve the truth about the Bismarck's secret technology played out over the following weeks with all the tension and intrigue of a Cold War espionage operation. As the Oceanic Explorer made its way back to port in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the team implemented Zara's data security plan. Multiple copies of their findings were encrypted and distributed among trusted team members. Key artifacts recovered by Hermes, including the crucial logbook and technical diagrams, were carefully preserved and documented with multiple witnesses present. Academic integrity is our strongest protection, Dr. Aldridge reminded her team. As long as we maintain rigorous documentation and transparency about our methods, it will be difficult for anyone to discredit or suppress our findings. Nevertheless, pressures mounted even before they reached port. The Russian, German, and British vessels had shadowed them for 2 days before finally breaking away. More concerning were the mysterious communications difficulties that began to plague the ship's satellite systems, and reports from university administrators about diplomatic inquiries regarding the expedition's findings. Howard worked tirelessly to ensure the Hermes AUV and all its data storage systems remained secure. "This drone has seen what no human eyes have seen in 8 decades, he remarked during one late-night security check. "In a very real sense, it's our only independent witness." Upon reaching Halifax, the team was met by university officials, legal representatives, and, more troublingly, government agents from multiple countries who expressed national security concerns about certain aspects of their research. What followed was a tense 2-month period of academic defense, legal maneuvering, and careful alliance building with trusted historians and technical experts who could corroborate their analysis of the Bismarck's secret Soviet compartment. Dr. Newman's linguistic expertise proved invaluable as he painstakingly translated and contextualized the recovered documents. Emilia Torres collaborated with materials scientists to authenticate the unusual alloys found in the electromagnetic propulsion components. Howard Winters worked with engineering historians to demonstrate that the technology, while experimental, was theoretically possible given the scientific knowledge of the late 1930s. Dr. Aldridge, meanwhile, became the public face of the discovery, carefully navigating media interest while ensuring that no single government could control the narrative. Her academic reputation and methodical approach earned the respect of independent historical commissions, which helped shield the team from the most heavy-handed interference attempts. 3 months after their return, the team published their preliminary findings in the prestigious Journal of Naval History. The paper, co-authored by the entire senior research team, laid out the evidence for Soviet-German technological collaboration on the Bismarck and the deliberate sabotage of that technology prior to the ship's final mission. The publication sent shockwaves through historical and diplomatic circles. Russian authorities initially denounced the findings as provocative historical revisionism, while German officials expressed deep concern about unsupported allegations regarding National Socialist strategic intentions. But the meticulous documentation provided by the Hermes AUV proved difficult to dismiss. Independent experts who examined the evidence confirmed the team's core conclusions. The electromagnetic propulsion system was real, the Soviet contribution was substantial, and the system had indeed been deliberately disabled before the Bismarck's final voyage. 6 months after the initial publication, additional corroborating evidence emerged from previously classified archives. A former Soviet naval engineer, now in his 90s, came forward with personal journals describing his work on Project Neptune, and his concerns when the technology transfer to the Bismarck proceeded despite growing tensions between Germany and the Soviet Union. Historians began re-examining the timing of the Bismarck's mission relative to Operation Barbarossa, finding new significance in Hitler's willingness to risk his navy's most powerful vessel just weeks before launching history's largest land invasion. The full historical implications continued to unfold, challenging long-held narratives about pre-Barbarossa German-Soviet relations and technological development during World War II. The discovery suggested that, had the collaboration continued, both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union might have deployed revolutionary naval technology years ahead of other world powers. For the research team, the experience transformed both their careers and their understanding of how history is constructed and maintained. What we found beneath 3 kilometers of Atlantic water wasn't just advanced technology, reflected Dr. Aldridge during a TED Talk a year after their discovery. It was evidence of how history is shaped not just by what happened, but by what powerful interests want us to believe happened. Howard Winters focused on the technological implications, collaborating with marine engineers to understand how the principles behind the Bismarck's experimental propulsion system eventually re-emerged in Cold War submarine technology decades later. Dr. Newman devoted himself to a comprehensive re-examination of German-Soviet technical exchanges in the 1930s, discovering evidence of other collaborative projects that had been erased from official histories after the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. For all of them, the Bismarck expedition had revealed a fundamental truth about historical research, that even the most thoroughly documented historical narratives may contain deliberate gaps, and that technology can sometimes unlock secrets that documents alone cannot reveal. 5 years after the discovery, Dr. Zara Aldridge stood at the podium of Stockholm's Nobel Hall, where she had been invited to deliver a lecture on how underwater drone technology had revolutionized historical research. The Bismarck case represents a watershed moment in marine archaeology, she told the assembled academics and dignitaries. For the first time, autonomous underwater technology allowed us to not merely observe a historical wreck, but to interact with it in ways that revealed hidden dimensions of its story. Behind her, high-resolution images from Hermes' final dive played on enormous screens. The rusted door with its Cyrillic markings, the advanced control consoles, the logbook pages that revealed the truth about the Bismarck's doomed mission. What makes the Bismarck discovery so profound is not just what it revealed about World War II history, but what it tells us about historical knowledge itself, she continued. For 80 years, the story of the Bismarck was considered essentially complete, a well-documented naval battle whose only remaining mysteries were technical details about its final moments. She gestured to the images of the secret compartment. Yet beneath that seemingly comprehensive narrative lay another story entirely, one of international technological collaboration, strategic deception, and cold political calculation in the weeks before Operation Barbarossa. The discovery had indeed transformed historical understanding of the period. Subsequent research had confirmed that the Bismarck case was not isolated. Other examples of German-Soviet technological exchange had been identified, all abruptly terminated and then deliberately obscured from historical records after the German invasion of the Soviet Union began. The lesson for historians, and indeed for all of us, is humbling, Dr. Aldridge concluded. Even our most certain historical knowledge may contain profound gaps. The past is not a fixed narrative but a complex reality that we glimpse imperfectly through whatever technological and documentary windows are available to us. After the lecture, she was joined by Howard Winters, who had continued to refine the capabilities of autonomous underwater vehicles for historical research. The Hermes II, his latest creation, was now exploring previously inaccessible shipwrecks around the world, uncovering new historical insights with each mission. Sometimes I think about how close we came to missing it entirely, Howard remarked as they discussed the Bismarck discovery. If Hermes had followed the standard survey pattern, if we hadn't noticed that structural anomaly, if we'd lacked the technical capability to cut through that door, history would still contain that fundamental gap. That's what keeps me up at night, admitted Zara. How many other historical facts are we accepting simply because we lack the technological means to see beyond them? The Bismarck revelation had indeed spawned a new approach to historical research that combined traditional documentary analysis with advanced technological investigation. Historians and archaeologists increasingly collaborated with robotics engineers and data scientists to explore historical sites in ways previously impossible. This methodological revolution extended beyond shipwrecks to other historical domains. Advanced ground-penetrating radar revealed previously unknown structures beneath ancient cities. Chemical analysis techniques identified unexpected trade connections between distant ancient civilizations. Machine learning algorithms detected patterns in historical texts that suggested new interpretations of key historical events. In each case, technology was not merely documenting known history but actively revealing dimensions of the past that had remained hidden using conventional research methods. I sometimes think of Hermes as a time traveler, reflected Howard. Not in the science fiction sense of physically moving through time, but in its ability to connect us directly with moments in history that were thought to be inaccessible. That's a beautiful way to think about it, Zara smiled. Technology as a bridge across time, allowing us to witness what was previously lost. As they looked back on the discovery that had changed both their careers and historical understanding, they recognized that the true significance of the Bismarck revelation went beyond the specific facts it had uncovered about World War II. The discovery had demonstrated the provisional nature of historical knowledge itself and the power of technology to reveal deeper truths beneath established narratives. The dark secret of the Bismarck, a mighty warship sent to sea with sabotaged experimental technology as part of a cynical strategic calculation, had remained hidden for 8 decades. Its discovery reminded humanity that truth often lies deeper than we imagine, requiring both technological innovation and intellectual courage to bring to light. In the endless depths of our oceans, in the stratified layers of our Earth, in the fading documents of our archives, countless other historical secrets await discovery. Each represents not merely an addition to our knowledge, but a potential transformation of how we understand our past, and by extension, ourselves. As autonomous drones continue their silent exploration of the world's most inaccessible places, they carry with them humanity's most powerful tool for historical discovery: the capacity to look beyond accepted narratives and see what truly lies beneath. The ocean depths hold not only shipwrecks but the power to rewrite history, challenging us to recognize that what we believe we know with certainty may be merely the surface of a much deeper truth.